Guys, today I played two absolutely crazy games, after which I was shaking. The first one featured a number of brilliant moves, both by me and by my opponent. Many participants of the tournament were gathered around our table looking at this game, and they were amazed by what was going on the board. You will be as well. In the second round, the game was also extremely captivating. My young opponent, a talented junior, played instantly, like the fastest shooter in the Wild West. He was playing so fast that by the end of the game, I was playing on increment, 30 seconds added after each move. I was playing on this increment, and he had more time than he had at the beginning of the game. This is how fast he was playing. And also, you will see that the content of the game is also worth exploring. Okay, let's dive into this. The first round, I play against Dos Muhambetov Aristan from Kazakhstan, and he's rated around 2055, something like this. And he's a junior, but not extremely young, not as young as my second opponent. He's like close to 18, I think. So he goes d4, and he told me he prepared using my online game against none other than James Canty III, world chess boxing champion, famous streamer, chess.com streamer, partner, and guest of my podcast. At the end of that episode, we played a game, and James Canty unleashed the Jabava London, which is exactly what happened in this game. So the Jabava London system is the system that features bishop f4 and knight c3, a very popular, like it's not maybe very popular, but quite popular these days. I've also dabbled with playing it with white. So d5, and this is theory. It's very important not to allow h5, because if I take white sacrifices the rook, and it's a very powerful initiative by white. You should not allow this. You should go h5, which I did. Knight f3, castles, knight e5, c5. This is still theory. Queen d2, knight c6. f3, white wants to go g4 and attack me caveman style on the king side, and castle queen side. Here I take, and up until this point, this is the same game as we played against James Canty. By the way, I managed to win against James, but out of the opening, I got a pretty bad position. And I remembered that some of my moves were inaccurate. And here I went queen b6, which is exactly what I did against James, but it's already a mistake, and white is already enjoys a pretty significant advantage after this move. The correct move is bishop f5 here, but in this line, I don't encounter it too often with black, so I obviously checked the game with the engine after I played against Canty, but it was 1.5 years ago, and I forgot. So I went queen b6, he went castles, and here I was really struggling to remember what I have to do here, because obviously black wants to go bishop f5 here in such positions, and then knight b4 and create some counterplay against c2 before white goes g4 and blows open black's position. And white always wants to go g4 and sometimes even h5, just sacrificing those pawns, opening the position, and sometimes bishop d3 to support this. And it's a very sharp position. And I was thinking of bishop f5, but I didn't like g4, and I didn't like the fact that after h5, if I take with the knight, my d5 pawn will be hanging, and my queen will be attacked with a tempo. So I thought, you know what? I will go bishop f5 later, but first I will go rook d8, overprotecting this pawn. And later I will go bishop f5, which worked out pretty well in this game. But if he takes here, he has great advantage. I take with the queen, most likely, and then bishop d3, and he's preventing me from going to f5. And he will go g5 and g4 next, and my counterplay is too slow. I cannot even go b5, he'll just take my pawn. So I need to waste time on a6, b5, b4, and even then, the knight drops back, and he's not getting mated anytime soon, whereas I will probably get mated. Not probably, but it's quite likely. But instead, he did not know the theory here. He probably expected some other move from me, because I played the suboptimal move, not the recommendation of the engine. And against Canty, I played something else. I think I played another horrible move against him. I played bishop e6 against Canty. but managed to trick him after that. So rook d8, he entered the thing and decided to go bishop e2, which is kind of logical, preparing g4, but it's too slow. Here I go bishop f5, and I trick him. He goes g4, I take, and he probably was considering some bishop retreating moves. But what I do is knight e4, a very strong move. And now black is seizing the initiative. The queen is attacked. So obviously my bishop is attacked, but the queen is attacked. If he takes my knight, I'll take with the bishop, which is what happened in the game. But it's not good for white. The best move, and I was considering it during the game, is knight a4, counter-attacking my queen. And then I calculated in my head this variation. Knight takes, takes. Here, both my bishop and my knight are hanging, but probably it's best to take the bishop. And then I have to rescue my knight. Also, I have this knight f2 fork idea. He can take, threatening taking this with check, so I have to take here. And when the dust settles, I think the endgame is fine for black. Black is even a little bit better according to the engine. Obviously, I didn't know this during the game, but while calculating this, I thought I'm pretty confident in my chances in this position, actually. The engine supports my my thoughts. So knight a4 would be not as bad as what he did in the game. In the game, he took. And then I took with the bishop. And look at this monster, the so-called wooden shield, you know. The rook is attacked. c2 pawn is pressured. And he needs time to attack me while I am already close to getting to his king. If he goes rook h3, which is a logical move, well, I'll go knight b4. And I'm getting to c2 very soon. And then I go rook c8. And it's not looking good for him. So first he takes the knight. I take with the queen, putting some pressure on c2. And here, if he goes rook h3, which is a logical move, I have this beautiful sacrifice. Bishop takes d4. And he cannot take my bishop because queen c2 will be a checkmate. So this is a deflection tactic. And he doesn't want to waste time on moving this rook. And he makes the best move in the position. Here is where fireworks start. So fasten your seatbelts, guys. Be ready. This will be a very fun ride. So he goes h5. He sacrifices the rook. Because you know what? My bishop is more important than his rook. My bishop is actually stronger. If I take his rook, white is suddenly better after rook h1 according to the engine. Because look, I drew some arrows how white can proceed with their attack. White has the two bishops advantage. White has the initiative with the attack. And I'm not getting to white's king anytime soon because he's well protected by the queen, and he can go c3, king b1, and I don't know what I'm doing here. So, of course, I do not take his rook here. Of course, I do not accept this gift. I take on d4 instead, which is a brilliant move according to the engine. So if he takes, he'll be checkmated, obviously, so he cannot take this bishop. And my bishops look at their strengths. Those two snipers are controlling the whole board, the whole battleground, and it's really dangerous for white. He goes c3 here, and actually I can even take the rook here, and I will be winning according to the engine. But both me and my opponent during the game were thinking that this is very dangerous for black, even though the engine says we are stupid and it's just winning. Black is up material, but still, it seems like black has some trouble with the king. But the problem for white is white cannot get the rook to h1. For example, if here, rook h1 would be a nice move to threaten checkmate, but bishop will take on h1 once again. So I could have taken this rook now, which is a good idea, but I didn't. I went queen a4 to go for checkmate, and it is a more human move, but a more faulty one, because now I'm no longer winning. It's back to equal. Why? Because first he goes bishop d3, insisting on trading those bishops. And once I take on a2, I want to check him on a1, and if he blocks, this will be a checkmate. But he takes on e4. I take here, and I still want to destroy him, but unfortunately for me, white has already counterplay of their own, and it's anyone's game now. So, and it's getting close to time trouble for both of us. First of all, for me, because I spent some time in the opening trying to figure out all the intricacies, move orders and stuff like that, and trying to remember my game against James Canty. So I try to move faster because it's a fast classical format, 45 minutes per game per opponent. So I cannot calculate everything, unfortunately, but I try. He takes my pawn, obviously, and I realize that no one in their right mind would take this pawn, because then queen h2 at the very least, and then check like this, and the engine finds some way to save this for black, but only moves to make a perpetual, to give a perpetual checks. So of course I do not take this, because I want to play for a win. I'm still in the attacking mode. And I find a very nice move. Rook a to c8, putting pressure over there. In some cases thinking of sacrificing the rook on c3. Actually, I was also, I found a nice way to draw the game, but I didn't use it because I didn't want to draw. Bishop e3 is drawing the game. So the queen is attacked 2 times. And of course, queen has to take on e3, but then I have this perpetual check. Check, 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 check. And white cannot escape because the d file is controlled by my rook. And if white goes to b1, then white loses because rook takes b1, rook takes d1, and white loses material. So white has to repeat the moves here. After check, go back, and it's a perpetual after bishop e3. But I did not want a draw. Again, I wanted to attack. I wanted to continue piling up pressure, and I go rook c8. Here, he takes with check. And what I calculated while going rook c8 is I take and rook h7 check, which is the most logical move. And I correctly evaluated this position as much better for me after bishop g7. Not only is this move blocking the check, but also the queen is attacked now. And the problem is, if the queen goes to e2, let's say, I have queen e1 or rook c3 first, doesn't matter actually, check. Then rook takes c3 check, then queen takes c3 check, then queen a1 check, then queen b2 checkmate. Even though this bishop on g7 is pinned, it is supporting the queen in this checkmating construction. Very nice mating construction. So this is what happens if he goes in this position queen e2. He doesn't have any sacrifices like this, unfortunately for him, because checks end very soon, and he doesn't have any checks now. By the way, the evil bar is glitching. In fact, it's winning for black. It's -7. But chess.com's evil bar is somehow glitching. I will turn it off. So this is winning because the queen is hanging, and if the queen moves anywhere, there is queen a1, and yeah, and I just take it here, and it's just winning. At the end of the day, I'm up a rook. So this is horrible. This does not work. And the only thing that white has is to trade the queen for 2 rooks, but this endgame is very much better for black. Probably close to winning. According to the engine, it's minus 1.7 already. So close to winning for black because white's king is so weak, and I have those pawns on e-file, and also my attack continues. In such positions, usually a queen is better than 2 rooks. So this is what I calculated. After rook h7, I was very proud of myself. This is what I calculated when going before going rook c8. So rook c8 takes, and instead of going rook h7 check, which is the most logical move, he finds a brilliant move, bishop to c7. Very nice tactic. This is called a clearance sacrifice, because he's opening up the files for his pieces to attack me and checkmate me. And the problem is if I go here, for example, rook h7, if I block, now it's like rook takes g7 works now, because I'll just get checkmated like this, for example, and not like this. Here he takes the rook, but if I take here, if I go here, I get checkmated like this. So this is very, very scary to face over the board when your opponent plays bishop c7 and you have like a couple of minutes left on the clock, and you try to find the move. And thankfully, I found the best move. I found the move, bishop f6. So the idea is that now his queen is hanging. I'm blocking the f file from any checks, and he has to take my rook. What else to do? He has to take my rook. But then I have another brilliant move, rook takes c3 check. And the idea is that if he takes with the pawn, this is a perpetual check. He has no place to go because my pawn is controlling this d3 square. So of course, I'm a little bit bitter because I wanted to win, but time is ticking down and I don't find a win, so I go for the line with the perpetual. But my opponent now gets ambitious, And he's like, I can take with the queen and go into this endgame, where white has 2 rooks and a bishop, and black has a queen and several pawns. Some of them will be passed pawns. So I check him a couple of times. I take the pawn on e3, I give him the pawn on e4, but now I have 2 connected passed pawns. But 2 rooks and a bishop, if they are well coordinated, they are much stronger than a queen. A queen is approximately equivalent to 2 rooks. A bishop is a bishop. A bishop is better than 2 pawns, especially if you can create some mating attacks on the black king. The thing is, the engine says it's completely equal. Let me try to turn on the evil bar. Maybe it stops glitching now. So it's 0.0. Completely equal here. Why? Because black can just give a perpetual check to white. But somehow, here we already both are playing on increment, 30 seconds per move. Somehow I panic. I do not see the exact way to deliver a perpetual, and I go king g6. Just sidestepping from potential checks like here or here. And I know that most likely if he takes this pawn, this bishop may be lost in the process of checks. Here he goes rook h to f1. And again, I have to give a perpetual check, but I'm playing like maybe inertia, maybe I don't know what, and I decide, okay, I'll push the pawn. What can happen here? Well, bad things can happen here, because first of all, he takes my pawn, and it turns out I don't have any tactical way to win this bishop with checks, because there is just not such a way. I check him, he runs, and I'm frustrated because I'm like, am I losing this game? He has some ideas like rook check here, and I cannot go here because then it will be a discovered check on my king. So after this check, I have to go there, and then maybe another rook will join the action. And what if I get checkmated? But I don't have time to reminisce over the past. I, of course, have to make the moves within 30 seconds each move. So I go b4, I push my pawn, I use my assets in the position, and I pray that everything works out in the end. He goes rook f to e1, attacking my queen, and I go check like this. And here, the computer finds some clever way to run with the king. To run first to c7, then to, let me show you some line. So king here, queen here, king here, queen here, king here, and if queen here, king here. And he has escaped all the checks. And it turns out that the 2 rooks will torture my king and I will lose this game. But thankfully, he's also playing on increment and he doesn't see this clever way to win. He goes here, and now I just perpetually check him. Finally, I understand that I have to deliver the perpetual check, and this is the threefold repetition. According to the rules of chess, this is a draw, and we make a draw. Not a bad result, I think. The game was crazy, could have gone either way, and the opponent is higher rated than me, so not bad, but a little bit disappointing considering that I have a win at some point in the game. But you need to see the second game because it's even crazier in some respect at least. So in the second game, I'm playing a junior who is like barely, I don't know, 10, 12 years old, something like that. Very young. He's called Kuanish Jumakanov. And he is rated 1850, but he's very young, he is progressing very fast, so probably his real strength is higher. And his peculiarity is that he's making all the moves instantly. So as I told you, at the end of the game, he had more time on the clock than he had at the beginning. Why? Because with each move, he gets a 30-second increment, and on average, he spent on his moves less than 30 seconds. So he was making, most of the moves he was making within like 10 seconds, or maybe even faster. So, and I was trying my best to win this game. Let's see how it went. e4, c5, I went for knight c3. And if you remember, in one of the previous games, I went for the Stelmashenko Sicilian, like after knight c3, queen d3, without knight c3 and e6, but it was different move order. So here d4 takes, knight c6 and queen d3. This is Pavel Stelmashenko's idea, Ukrainian candidate master, a very talented theoretician. And with this idea, our mutual friend, Grandmaster Alexander Shimanov, defeated Magnus Carlsen once, which made it popular at some point. But in this case, I went for a different variation of, like, not the same idea, but somewhat similar idea. I go queen e3, not d3, but queen e3. it's also like a rare, I would say hipster anti-Sicilian. That's what I would call it. So he goes knight f6, I go knight f3, and very often if black goes d6 here, white goes b3, bishop b2, castles long. This reminds me of the Magnus Sicilian. It's a different move order, and the queen is on e3, not on d2, but there is a video on this channel on the Magnus Sicilian. I like it very much. You can check it out, but it's a different one, but very similar. But instead, my opponent does not go d6 here. He goes d5, and I'm like, damn it! This is the only move I did not prepare properly for. I was prepared for bishop b4. I remembered all the lines. I remembered all the lines after bishop e7, queen c7, a6, d6. These are the most popular moves. Even e5 is more popular than what my opponent did. d5 it's not the optimal move, but like it's not top 5 engine recommendations. It's not among them, but it got me out of book, which was effective for my opponent. So I took, he took, I took, he took, and I remember the last thing I remembered is bishop d3 is the move here. Here my knowledge ended, and he went bishop c5. All the moves, by the way, he was playing instantly. And I was hesitating between queen e2 and queen e4. I did not remember my files. Turns out in my files it said that queen e2 is better, and the engine says queen e2 is good advantage for white, mostly because, you know, this dark squared bishop is not very active. It's like the bad French bishop. And if black castles short, which black probably should do, I already showed you some arrows how white can attack, and white's position is promising. But instead I went into an endgame because I thought, okay, he's a youngster. Probably those guys like calculating stuff, attacking middle games, and most of them don't play endgames well. Let's play an endgame. He took. I took. Spoiler alert, he played the endgame. Not so bad. Bishop d7, I go c3, restricting his knight. Now it cannot jump to b4 or d4. He goes f5, a very committal decision, by the way, opening this diagonal. But the engine says it's okay. During the game, I didn't like it. I thought this shows lack of positional understanding. Maybe it does, but it's a very concrete decision, and it works out tactically. He goes e5. He wants to push e4. And here I was calculating some stuff, and I came up with the move that is, according to the engine, the best move, b4. Kicking the bishop. The problem is that if the bishop goes here, I go b5, and this knight has to stay in touch with this e5 pawn. And if it doesn't, then if it moves, I don't know, to a5, for example, I'll take the e5 pawn. And yes, he'll take the b5 pawn, but I decided that e5 is more important, and the engine agrees. White is a little bit better. So instead of going to b6, he went to d6 to overprotect this pawn. Now b5 doesn't work, and it's stupid because now the knight has just great squares. But instead of going b5, my plan was to rotate the knight to c4 to put pressure on this bishop. Turns out it's not such a good plan. According to the engine, it's better to go bishop e3 here, but I will not encumber you with two long lines. I went bishop knight d2. He went rook c8, preparing to control this file. I go knight c4, attacking the bishop. Bishop drops back. Now bishop b3. And black is better. So in this endgame, or I don't know, queenless middle game, I got a little bit outplayed because he took the center, and yes, he weakened his position a little bit. This diagonal is weak. He cannot castle because then I have some knight jumps with checks winning material. Also, he cannot put the bishop on e8. Well, he can, but then I'll win the bishop for the knight. I'll enjoy two bishops advantage. Very nice. But that's the only good thing for me in the position. The problem for me is that my pieces are a little bit stuck, and the c file is a problem. So he went knight e7, and now he's threatening, for example, b5. And when the knight moves, the rook will take on c3, so I have to go bishop b2, which is the top engine move. But this bishop is not happy. It's just seeing its own pawn, so it's not nice. Bishop b5 here happens, and I drop back. He goes f4. And here I was calculating some c4 stuff, takes, and the engine says it's around equal, but I didn't like the fact that he's not obliged to take my knight and exchange it for the bishop. He can just drop back here, and if I jump here, he can take, and my pawn on d5 will not be so good, I thought. And yeah, the engine says The engine agrees, but it says that still c4 is the best move. And here, instead of knight d5, knight g4 apparently is the move. And if knight d7 here, then knight f1. Wow, but this is some computer stuff, hard for humans. So instead, I did not go c4. Also, I have to remind you, he's making all the moves instantly. That makes my task so hard, because usually I'm thinking not only on my time, but on my opponent's time, because it's a fast classical time control, 45 minutes per game. You have to make the moves faster. You cannot calculate everything. I'm used to the format where they give you at least 90 minutes per game, or sometimes even more. And here in 45, it's not enough for good calculation. So I try to use my opponent's time, but I cannot use his time because he is not using his time. And because of this, at this point, it's move 20. I already have 20 minutes out of 45. He has 53 minutes or something like this. So he had some time added to his clock. Yes, he spent some time, several minutes on his moves, but you see how fast he is. And he's playing well, and he's outplaying me. And this is also getting to my nerves. So I decide not to calculate long lines, to just go knight d5 here after f4. He takes, I take, his pawn is hanging, so he goes bishop c6. Of course, I do not trade because that would help him develop, so instead I long castle, best move. If he takes, he will help me develop, which is a good thing. But of course, he's making again the best move instantly, king e7, preparing to activate the rooks. The king is fully comfortable in the center. I go f3, very useful move. Preparing to prevent this e4 pawn push. And actually, I'm quite optimistic because I have the queenside pawn majority. You know what it is? It's the pawn majority on the queenside. Very obvious. 100 points to Gryffindor if you answer this question. And here he goes bishop a4, attacking my rook. And the all-knowing computer. By the way, I don't know why I'm wearing headphones for this video. I was listening to some music before, so I forgot to take them off. The all-knowing computer says that I can sacrifice the exchange here. Just go for this position. Sacrifice the rook for a bishop and a pawn. And apparently white is better, because after rook here, bishop goes here, and I just push this pawn. And the bishops are such a menace, but I did not consider it even. What I did consider was take this pawn, he takes my rook, I take his rook. But he has this bishop takes f3 and no end move. At the end of this variation, I'm not winning anything. It's equal material. But I evaluated this position as better for black, and the engine agrees. The engine says that white would be stupid to go for this position. It's minus 0.9. Again, the evil bar is glitching, but you can trust me. You can check this with Stockfish if you want. So that's why I did not go bishop takes b7, because I did not even consider sacrificing the exchange here. And if you don't sacrifice the exchange, you get a worse position. So instead, I just go rook d2, which is normal. Rook d8. And he's sacrificing a pawn now. And I'm wondering, like, again, he makes this move instantly. And I'm like, is this a sacrifice? Is this a blunder? Is he a genius? And I'm like, okay, I have to take this pawn, of course. I take this pawn. He takes my rook. I take his rook, he checks me. Only logical move for me is to go here with the king. And now he goes bishop c7. And I realize maybe he's a genius. Let me turn off the evil bar. It's glitching completely. I will just be telling you the evaluation from time to time. So he's genius. He wants to go here, check. I will have to go here. And then he goes, infiltrates with the rook. And I cannot even go rook g1 to support the pawn, because this square will be controlled by his bishop. And the problem is that, yes, he gave me this pawn, but my king is so weak, and my rook cannot get into the game, and this bishop is not participating. So I'm playing just with one bishop. And yes, I can go bishop e4, but I will show you what happened next. So because of this, I decide, okay, first of all, at least I'll put my rook on a more active square, rook e1, which is a mistake. Turns out in this position, before rook e1, I had a winning advantage. I will show you why. It's quite subtle. But after rook e1, it's back to a very complicated game where black has compensation for the sacrificed pawn. So I will show you why. But first of all, what's the idea of rook e1? I want to go c4. And c4 will attack this pawn. And once he defends this pawn, I will be able to go bishop d5 and block his rook from ever infiltrating. That's my plan. So of course he goes immediately king f6, again spending 0 seconds, maybe like 10 seconds on this move. He's sidestepping this stuff. And now, the more I think, I use most of my remaining time in this position, because I really dislike my position. I know I have an extra pawn, but it's not felt at all. And I calculate various variations. For example, I calculate the following variation. Bishop e4 with the idea of going bishop c2 and trading those bishops, and then I can at least get some breathing space. For example, bishop e4, bishop b6 with the idea of this check. And the problem is that if I go bishop c2 now, he checks me, he takes with check, and he goes rook d2 check, and he takes the pawn, and he most likely will take some other pawns, and I'm completely busted. I'm lost, actually. It's -2 in this position. So bishop c2 is not good in this position. What if I take the pawn? Then he can check me, and he can go rook h8. And he can take this pawn. And the most logical thing to do here would be, I don't know, rook here does not work after rook h1. So I analyze this. I don't like it. I think that if rook h8, I have bishop c2, which is more logical. He takes, and he takes this pawn. Now this pawn is hanging. I have rook e2, and now this is all I calculated. I spent like more than 10 minutes on calculation. And I see the move e4. And it's a problem. Because if I take f3 is the idea. So first, and I'm still calculating. I see that c4 check is an idea, but he'll just sidestep with his king. Again, if I take f3, and he's winning, because if I take my rook falls, and if I don't take his pawn queens. So I cannot take on e4. King d1 is the only move. And here I stop my calculation because I understand that this is not winning for white. Definitely only black can win this. And actually it's a draw according to the engine, rook h1, and black can repeat moves, and white has nothing better than repeating the moves. So this whole sequence, I calculated in my mind here. No, here. Here. So this is move 28, and I calculated until move 38, 10 moves. And this variation I didn't like, which is why I went g3 to induce g5, because otherwise, if I take, he takes, I have c4 with check, he doesn't want this, so he goes g5, takes, and I go for the very same variation, but without the g-pawns, so that at the end of this line, check, rook here, I have bishop e4, and once he takes, at least there is no g2 pawn that is hanging. In the previous line there was the g7 pawn that marched and took here, and there was the g2 pawn that marched and took here. So I thought this exchange is in my favor, and actually yes, the position now is equal. With the g-pawns it would be lost for white, so this is an achievement. But this is not the line that I wanted to play. Of course I wanted to play a different line in this position, which is why I calculated for so long. In this position I went g3, g5, and this is what happened, but I wanted to play, of course, c4. Very logical move, to block this, or to block this. Well, after c4, bishop b6 fails to this check, but you get the idea. So c5 is another idea, or bishop d5, blocking the rook from infiltration. But the problem is that c4, there is rook b8 attacking the bishop drops back, this pawn drops, now I'm no longer up a pawn. And of course there is rook e4 threatening to take this pawn, but then just g5, and the position is complicated. There are plans like bishop a3 or g3 that the engine gives, but the engine gives the tiniest plus to white. And now let me explain why I made the biggest mistake in this game. Let's rewind. So in this position, as I told you, I want to go c4, but I don't like this variation, I don't go for it. But instead, if we go one move back, you see why now c4 is winning. Because after c4, I'm just winning. After rook b8, I go bishop b5, and he cannot take this pawn, because it will be a pin. So I completely, I forgot about this thing, one move earlier. I moved too quickly because he was moving so quickly. I needed to move quickly. I moved quickly, rook e1 in this position. He goes king f6, and now I start thinking. And now after c4, I realize that rook b8 is rook b8 and rook takes b4 is the thing. So yeah, probably his time management was a good trick that that confused me. So at least in this aspect. So here I still should have gone c4 because that would be a risk-free position for me probably. And I went for a very risky position. I went g3, we took here, took, check, rook h8, bishop e4, rook h2. As I again was showing you, without the g pawns it's a better version, but still it's very dangerous. I'm up a pawn, but my pawns are not easily moving and his bishops are dominating and my rook is stuck on the first rank, and it's a very, very scary position, and the engine says it's 0.0. So I go bishop c1, because if I go c4 here, he has bishop d2, fork, winning a pawn, and now I'm not even up material and I'm still stuck and paralyzed. So I go bishop c1. Of course, if he trades, I'll take with the rook and I'll be probably winning. So he doesn't do that. He drops back with the bishop. Now I realize that I can just sit and wait and then it will be a draw. He has no way to win this, but I want to win. And I realized that the only way to try to play this for a win is to push the pawns, because if I go here, he'll just drop back and it will be move repetition. So I go c4, but he goes bishop d4. Now he's threatening this fork. Unpleasant. I go c5. At least I'm like, okay, if he goes bishop here, I have rook here, and if he takes, I'll push this pawn, and my rook maybe will get active at some point. So, by the way, I'm interested what the engine says. The engine says it's also a draw, by the way. So it's also a draw, but he doesn't allow this even. I go c5. He goes king e6. King e6, very nice move, just controlling with his king my pawns. And of course I have this tactic, bishop takes a4. And if he takes, I have discovered checks and winning material, even though that is also not winning, but it is a nice tactic. But he's not even obliged to take. He can go rook takes, rook b2 check, and if I go here, this will be a checkmate discovered. So I have to go here, then here, and only black can win this. The engine says again it's a draw, but it's very scary. Those bishops and rook are harassing my king. So I cannot take on f4 like no one in their right mind with a couple of minutes on their clock like I have at this point would do this. So I go bishop a3, trying to prevent this pawn from falling. But this looks ugly. The bishop is not impressive here. And already at this point, black is better. And he still has like 50-something minutes on his clock. I have like 1 minute, something like that. And I am now playing on increment. And I see that everything is slipping away. And I don't know what to do. But I have to make the moves. He goes king d7. Very slowly, methodically, just controlling with the king any ideas with my pawns that I might have. And waiting because I cannot break through, and he is enjoying total control over the position. He is a little bit better according to the engine, but still it should be a draw. I go rook c1, he goes bishop e3, just attacking my rook. I draw back, he goes bishop d4. It's like silent draw offer, because if I go back to rook c1, probably he'll go bishop e3 again. But somehow my stubbornness took the best of me here, and I'm like, I'm not repeating the moves. I'll try to trick him somehow. And I go bishop d3. Even though this is not the recipe for success, especially when you have no time and your opponent has lots of time. He goes bishop c6, suddenly rerouting. And I realize that this pawn will get harassed as well now. And it's going to be maybe a problem for me, but because he's also eyeing this pawn after bishop d5. And if I lose that one, I'll lose the game. So I go bishop c4, preventing bishop d5. He goes here. Now he has this idea, for example, harassing me with the bishop like this, diagonally. So I go b5, he goes bishop d7, and I go bishop d3, preventing him from checking me here. And he goes bishop e6, and he tricked me. I forgot completely about this move. I was playing on increment, and I made the move fast, and I immediately realized I'm busted, and now I'm losing. Maybe the evil bar is not glitched. Let me show this to you. Yes, the evil bar stopped glitching apparently. I'm losing because he'll just take these pawns and he'll check me, and he maybe checkmates me or whatever. So the only way to prevent this is bishop c2. And I'm praying that he takes here, because that probably would mean that my king gets some breathing space, and even though he takes the c5 pawn, probably this should be a draw. Yes, this is a draw according to the ancient. So he's up a pawn, but my pieces get active, and his pieces, his pawns are not getting anywhere. So that would have been best case scenario, bishop takes a2 tactic. But he's not going for this. Immediately he makes the best move, bishop c4, forking my rook and pawn. And I realize he'll take my pawn next, and what do? Of course, whenever you have a worse endgame, you have to trade the pawns, because that would at least give you some more drawing chances. So I go b6, trading my 2 pawns for his 1 pawn, because otherwise he would just have taken both pawns for free. And I go rook c1. Now he no longer has this bishop a2 check idea, because my king does not have to be guarding this bishop. He goes bishop d5. Now he wants to take this pawn, and he will, and he's completely winning at this point. And I'm still playing on increment, and he's still playing instantly as if he's playing on increment. He still has all the time in the world, but he's maybe impatient. Maybe he wants to put more pressure on the clock on me, but he's still winning. So I go bishop b2. I'm trying desperately to go for this exchange to at least enter with my king to join the action. He takes the pawn, and it's a winning endgame for him. It's -4, but it requires some technique. I march with my king, and he goes e4. And now I go rook f1. In a desperate attempt to go for the rook and bishop versus rook. So I want to take this and take this, and then he'll take my remaining pawn at some point, and he will have a rook and a bishop against a rook, and we will play 50 more moves until a draw, or until I blunder something and lose this endgame. But it should be holdable. But he has a very easy win here in one move, which he misses because he plays again very fast. Well, it's not a win in one move, but close to this. Rook h1 is winning. Because if I trade, which is probably the best I can do, and go king d4, for example, he has e3. Bishop d1 looks to be the only move. And now slowly he will win this endgame. He will probably rotate the bishop like this. The bishop cannot take here because then a2. So those bishop endgames with 2 connected passed pawns are easily winning. Even though I have this a pawn, it doesn't matter too much. So that would happen if I took the rook, and if I don't take the rook, he has e3 here. And rook to f3, e2, and he's queening, because the rook is controlling the square. Instead, he rushes it. And instead of going rook h1 here, he goes e3 first. And then I take the bishop. And he immediately realizes that he's squandered his advantage. He goes e2. I go king d2, and he offers me a draw, which I accept because it's a dead draw. The line that would have happened on the boards otherwise is this. And even though in Title Tuesdays many people win such positions because there is no increment these days, and people play just with 20 seconds on the clock, rook against rook, and whoever is the fastest shooter on in the Wild West wins, but here we have the 30-second increment, so there is no reason to play this on. So in this position we agree to a draw, and I have this miraculous save. So 2 draws, but very fighting draws. If you liked my recap, please do drop a comment, because these recaps, I really put my soul into them, but I see that they don't get as many views and as many comments as my other content. And it's hurting my YouTube channel, actually, because, you know, if you have videos that are underperforming, YouTube thinks that you are not doing well and stops recommending your other videos. That's the vicious circle that we YouTubers are in. So if you want to support me, please give me a like and write a comment, something about this recap. And tomorrow I will be playing the last round of the tournament. It's going pretty well. I'm gaining some rating points, even though I've lost... I think I've lost 3 games and won 2 and drawn 3. So I'm on -1, but the field is very strong. Several international masters. I played several FMs. So let's see whom I play tomorrow, and see you in the next recap. Bye-bye.